Okay. So screen sharing. Yep. And right. Okay. Oops. Right. Okay. Right. Hopefully that's all good. We'll find out anyway. Presenting. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think we're good. Okay, well, I might make a start. I think it's 5. So yeah, I just want to try and stick to the time limit. I'm very aware of everybody's time commitments. So anyway, welcome Tessa, and we're looking today at power planning, and this is a really good follow-up from last week's webinar where I sort of broke down specifically how one way to approach teaching a CI reader. So this follows on really nicely, but the point of this webinar is really to talk about the framework and how that can be adapted to really, you could apply that to anything, any topic or theme that you are working through. So we'll make a start. So yeah, this is a daily framework, and it is gold because not only does it minimize planning time and streamlines everything really well, but it also maximizes the opportunity to provide CI, comprehensible input. So it's yeah, it's a great structure to have. It's like I guess the bones of the skeleton. And to look a little bit more into it, the lesson framework looks like this. I do give credit to Tina Hardigan. She's a very dynamic Spanish and French teacher, and she was one of the first teachers that I observed doing a demo of different CI strategies on her YouTube channel, which is CI Liftoff. I believe that Tina's moved away or backed off a little bit from the training, but her YouTube videos are still up there, and I recommend anyone in the community to have a look at those because, you know, I can explain these, but she, yeah, actually demos them, and it being demoed in a different language gives you a whole different perspective on how effective the CI techniques are. So anyway, there's a little plug. And the lesson framework is brilliant because it covers all of our key skills: speaking, listening, writing, and reading. And so the chunks of the lesson are broken down into these 5 parts. So starting with an oral introduction, which goes for, you know, between 5 and 8 minutes, I suppose. And that is an opportunity to really connect in straight away with the students. It's a bit like a hook. Following on from that is the bulk part, I suppose, of the lesson, and that's the oral input. Following on from that, shared writing, and then shared reading, and then a quick quiz to finish. So those 5 key points, as I said, can be adapted. That just gives you a framework to work on, to build on. So if we look at it a little bit more in detail, I suppose, step 1, the oral introduction, as I said, it's a bit like a hook, and short and sharp and straight into the target language. So the things that I've used, and this isn't an exhaustive list, but question of the week, that's great for maybe some more junior classes where it could be just a one-word thing and you're repeating the question over and over. So sushi ga suki desu ka? and it's just a yes, no sort of response. The conversation starters have been really fun to do with the secondary school students because it allows a little bit more, discussion. And depending on where your students take you, it can be a really fun way. And I've got a few examples of conversation starters on the next slide. Calendar talk, I've spoken about in the Facebook group, the JLTAV, and I'm not going to go into great detail with that today, and also songs. So just a short, snappy oral activity to do at the beginning of the lesson. So an example of some of the conversation starters might be, what's the colour of your toothbrush? So that could be the conversation starter. And then from there, you might say, how many do you have? So you're talking about colours, you're talking about using counters. You could do, you could ask if it's do you like hard brushes or soft brushes? And tally up even, the colour, how many each, how many in the class, which colour is the most popular colour. Favourite drink is another one, or the best superhero, or even a either or. Which do you prefer, snakes or spiders? Favourite milkshake flavour, or even a yes/no question like pineapple on pizza, yes or no. So it just starts a bit of a conversation. Please jump in if you have any questions. I'm happy to answer any on the go. Another example of an oral introduction, in that first 5 minutes of the lesson is a student check-in like this. So I showcased one of these last week as well. The picture prompt was, I think, a cat. These are a mixture of different animals in funny positions with funny emotions. So with a number next to each of them. So you could ask who's one today, who's feeling like one today. If you're totemo ureshii desu, you'd be hachiban desu. Peko peko desu ka? 9ban desu. And so lots of chance to recycle some language there. And also, from a pastoral care point of view, it's a really good chance for students to let you know, for you to check in with them and see how they're going. The second part of the lesson structure, the framework, is rich oral input. So the goal for this is listening. And by listening, the student's role is to listen to get meaning. That's their job. The teacher's role is to provide Japanese language input that the students understand. So our job is to make it really, really comprehensible so that there's no difficulty with their comprehension, that they understand the messages that are being said. And that can be done through any of these or other CI techniques. So it could be through a survey, it could be through picture talk, movie talk, it could be a special person interview. So that's where you're providing all of the oral input. So after all of that rich oral input, we move on to shared writing. So shared writing, again, I talked about this last week and went into a little bit more detail with write and discuss, which is a really good strategy, CI strategy. But basically in the shared writing section of your lesson, you collectively with the class, providing a summary of the daily input that you all created together. And typically it could be between 3 and 8 sentences. It could be more, depending on your level, depending on your cohort of students. You could use Romaji or script or a mixture of both. There's a lot of debate about Romaji and the use of that. And for me, I have seen great success with students with the use of Romaji, just scaffolding their comprehension so that there's no delay in the processing. So because the oral input is so rich and we use so much language, so they're hearing all of that input. There's never been any issue with pronunciation in my experience at all. And that's because they've heard it. They've heard ski des so many times because we're using that, or des. So that's my 2 cents worth there. So yeah, Romaji and script mixture is really good, particularly if you are using the Super 7. And certainly, you know, I would use the Super 7, for example, des or ga arimasu, definitely in script right from the beginning. The Romaji I would use for proper nouns. So it's similar to how the scaffolded books in the JapanEasyReads collection are written. After the shared writing, the students then write it up in their notebooks. So, you know, they'd have a notebook like this that was dedicated to their shared writing. And what's great about that is that it provides writing in context because it's been created together, and the teacher has, as it's being created and written down, is asking those questions or prompting to help with the writing process. So, for example, okay, Francis Sensei, and then I might even do my gesture for wa, sushi ga. Ski des, that's right. Or Francis Sensei wa natto ga suki janai desu. So they have already heard the story of me with the natto, or we've covered that in our oral input stage, so they know and they can predict the answer, the ending to some of these sentences. So it's really rich in context. So as I said, they write up there in their notebooks with a date, and that provides a record over the semester or the year of the progression of their writing. And so they're just copying that down. But the good thing about this is it can then be recycled for and act as some very comprehensible reading. And by having a record of this very comprehensible reading that they have co-created, it really starts some good reading habits. So these good reading routines can be started then once they've done a few of these. I would then be building them up to have 5 minutes of silent reading time where that they can read through some of these, the shared readings. So they're getting more input. Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So this is based on the questions and stuff that you were talking about before.
Yeah. So if I just flick back.
You would write those.
Sorry, what was that, Tessa?
So you write those sentences. So, for example, you would ask them the questions and you would write their answers up for them, and then they copy it, or are you hoping they'll?
Yeah, so say if I know you can't see this, so I'll just say if we did a movie talk and it was about you know, I've got a movie talk about a dog that called Fritz, and he you see in the little video that he keeps trying to catch food, and his master is throwing the food at him, and he's trying to catch, and some of them he catches, some of them he doesn't catch, and then so that would be the rich oral input. I'd be saying, things like inu no namae wa Fritz desu. Fritz wa tabemono ga suki desu. And I'd be using gestures to help. And then we see, as we're doing the movie talk, we see all the food that he's eating. So it might be, steiki ga suki desu. Steiki o kachu shimasu ka, shimasen ka? So does he catch it? Doesn't he catch it? And there's lots of, I'm just using that one as an example. So that would be all the movie talk oral input. And then when you come to the shared writing, I would then be prompting the students to help me write a recap of that. So I might say to the class, inu ga imasu ka? Hai. And then I would write up, inu ga imasu. And then I'd say another question. Minasan, inu no namae wa Bob desu ka? And they'd say, iie. Inu no namae wa nan desu ka? Fritz desu. So desu ne. Inu no namae wa Fritz desu. So you're asking questions, but you're also trying to clarify. You're using it as another opportunity, I suppose, to provide a bit more input by asking some questions and giving some either or questions, and then writing up really slowly so that they can see inu, and then I might do the gesture for wa, and the kids will be prompted to help with that. Inu wa tabemono ga suki desu ka, suki janai? Hai, suki desu. There. So, and then I would write that and complete the sentence. So does that clarify things a bit?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, no worries. Okay. So after we've done the shared writing, we move on to the shared reading of what we've just written. So it's shared reading of what we've done. So in that case, it would be Fritz the dog reading what we've actually recapped. And as I said, if it's a beginner, class, it might only be 3 or 4 sentences. It might not be the whole thing, but it could be just a short recap of the movie talk or the picture talk or the conversation that you had in the whatever it was in that the main section, the oral input section. So shared reading, I've talked about some of these last week. I would definitely start with choral reading with the whole class, going through and projecting it up on the board and reading through and clarifying meaning as need be. But also last week, I think it was last week, I did do a post about some paired reading activities such as volleyball reading. Volleyball reading is, have you ever done that, Tessa? Have you done volleyball reading? Sorry, that's okay. I'll press on. I know that you're driving, so I'll press on. So volleyball reading is where they're in pairs and they'd have a printout of the reading that we'd done. So maybe the following lesson, I would have printed out a copy of the Fritz recap, Fritz the dog recap. And I'd have that, and in pairs, the students take turns to read it. So one person, if we were doing it together, I would start and I would read the Japanese, and then you would give me the translation in English. So, for example, inu ga imasu, and then you would say, there is a dog, and then you would say the next Japanese sentence, inu no namae wa Fritz desu, and then I would give that translation, and you would ping pong through like that. So it just supports the student that's not, still building up confidence. From there, obviously, individual reading. The other thing I wanted to mention was the app that I've used called Mote, which you can add to a Google slide presentation. So what I've done before is, after a recap, I would type it up and then I would record me reading it so that they've got the visual, but also the audio of the recap of what we've done. And that's been really an extra layer of support for reluctant readers. Finally, the quick quiz. So there's lots of different ways to do this, and I'm sure many of you already do some of these, but I have found this is a good way as a bit of an exit ticket. I'd have this printed out and hand them out where there's little slips of paper with maybe, between 5 and 8 questions. The students put their name and the date on it, and so again, it acts as another listening opportunity. So, so if it was a true or false, it might be neko ga imasu, and if it was, obviously false, they would record, F. Or it could be a little exit ticket where, it might be what Super 7 word did you use, did we use today? What's a new word that you have acquired now, that you know now? Another great way, a real quick one, just a 5-minute at the end of the lesson with the whiteboards. So each student has a whiteboard, and so they're listening to the question, inu no namae wa nan desu ka? And so they write it down, and then you count down to give the students the wait time. So go, yon, san, ni, ich, hai, dozo, and then they show their responses. So you can just quickly have a quick glance and see who's got it and who needs more input. Pencil grab is another great little mini assessment that I talked about last week as well. 2 students pair up with a marker or a pencil between them, and again they listen to this teacher give a statement. If the statement is correct, they grab the marker. If the statement is not correct, they can't touch the marker. If someone does touch the marker and it's not correct, their partner gets a point. So it would be something like, Fritsu wa tabemono ga suki janai desu. Now that's incorrect. So no one would touch the pencil. If someone did, their partner gets the point. So that's it for now. If there are any questions, that you've got, please feel free to. I know you're multitasking, Tessa, so that's fine. But if you have got any questions, or anyone that's watching this later, if you've got questions or even some suggestions for what you'd like to see in a webinar in future, please let me know either by email or through the JapanEasyReads community chat line. I'm very happy to tailor these Tuesday sessions to whatever the group needs. So, yeah, look forward to webinar 6. So I'll finish off, I'll just stop recording now.